It's a 30-minute express escape. Get a dose of destination knowledge, inspiration, and storytelling, showcasing phenomenal travel opportunities. I'm your host and number one travel expert. I'm destinationwhatever.com. Good evening, everybody. It's me, yours truly, Dave Wentworth with destinationwhatever.com. They got a really exciting destination here tonight and a really exciting guest speaker. Let me tell you about what we're going to be doing tonight. Well, you already know, of course, because you've RSVP'd to be here. And we're going to be taking a trip up to Greenland. We have a guest speaker from HX Hurtigruten Expeditions. There's been a rebranding, and I'm sure he'll talk about that. But our guest tonight, his name is Ian, and he's with that fine company. And he did a trip that just gave me so much travel envy up to Greenland this summer that I reached out and asked him to share our journey with us. Before we get going with Ian, I just want to say as well that the timing I think is perfection to be thinking about Greenland because it is a summer destination, folks, and we are coming out of summer right now. So we can be thinking ahead about summer 2025 or maybe another summer, but you're going to want to be thinking about growing up to Greenland in the summertime. We think about things like the midnight sun. And so this is the time to be planning. There's also some great rates, of course, some great sales. There's some great suites on promotion right now with HX. So again, it's just a really great time. And finally, with these small ships, booking earlier is better than later because if you can get your booking in earlier, well, it just allows us to have a better pick of the cabins. These are smaller ships. There's only so many cabins, and Greenland's really popular right now. Like the whole world is getting up there. So it is the place to chillax to the max. So Ian, welcome to destinationwhatever.com travel talk on Greenland. Let's hear about what you did on your summer vacation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody for joining, whether that's live or maybe afterwards. Greenland is such an incredible place. I just got back from there maybe a month ago, a month and a half at this point. And I'm so excited to share it with as many people as I possibly can. So thanks for having me here. Yeah, you briefly mentioned also that we've had a bit of a rebrand. So what you see on your screen now says HX. You'll see on my sweater it says HX. That stands for Hurtigruten Expeditions. We started way back when in 1893. Hurtigruten started sailing the Norwegian coast, and then 3 years later they went to Svalbard, and that was their first sort of expedition cruise. And now, after 128 years, we've split brands. So Hurtigruten continues to operate on the Norwegian coast, but I'm with HX Hurtigruten Expeditions, where we go really far-flung places like Antarctica and Galapagos, and like I mentioned, of course, we're all here for Greenland. So we'll talk about that. My name is Ian Kivell, like Dave mentioned, and of course, I'm with HX Expeditions. Um, and a lot of people, if they're not already familiar with different expedition companies, they'll say, "Who is HX?" Or if they are familiar with other companies, they'll say, "How are you different from other companies that are also in the expedition space?" So I've made this little cheat sheet. This is the three things that make us different, and is just a bit of a point form list. So first one is experts in expeditions, like I said, since 1896. So the first expedition cruise, which is actually in the picture on the left side of the screen, it was uh, from the Norwegian coast way up north to Svalbard, which is an archipelago in northern Norway. And that was in 1896. There's our first ship, the Lofoten, in the picture to prove to you the destination's the same. We've changed our vessels, of course. It was a really exciting time in history of exploration. They were really changing our understanding of the world, and that kind of spirit of exploration is still in our DNA. So, number one, we're the oldest. We're the originals in expedition. Number two is, as it says, they're made for curious travelers. So this kind of talks about a couple things, including our science and education approach to what we do. Last year, we won the Cruise Critic Choice Award for Best Science Programming on board expedition ships. We've got full-on science labs. There's all sorts of scientists on board. I think we had 14 of the 17 expedition staff were scientists with their PhD in different fields. Amazing. It's all about curiosity. It's the most powerful instinct. It's the desire to explore the world and not just like go to new places, but really understand them. It's that satiation of the curiosity that people are after when they go to these amazing places with us. So number one, we're the originals. Number two, best in science. And number three is leaders in mindful adventure. It's not just where you go, but it's how you go there. It's keeping sustainability in mind. It is not just environmental sustainability, but also treating the wildlife properly when you get there and making sure that the communities come first. We chat with them first before we develop itineraries to go and see those places where these people live. So it's a huge, huge, huge focus for us. It's in fact, of course, as you can see, one of the three main pillars, keeping sustainability and responsible travel in mind. In fact, our fleet of ships, we have five. Two of them are twin sister ships. We were just chatting about them before I started, the Roald Amundsen and the Fridtjof Nansen, and they're each hybrid battery powered. And so they were each given the award of most sustainable cruise ship in the world. So that means every ocean cruise line, every river cruise line you can think of, every expedition cruise line you can think of, all of those ships, the two most sustainable ones are in our fleet. So to sum it up here, point form, cheat sheet, we're the oldest, best in science, most forward sustainable thinking. And the last thing we do, kind of before I wanted to explain before we jump really into Greenland, which I'm really excited for, is this balance, the idea of the perfect balance on board. So we kind of think it's like three parts. You've got adventure, comfort, sustainability. We're right in the middle. And some companies, they might go ultra luxury and kind of skew towards that comfort bit, but they'll take away from the sustainability. They'll take away from the fact that you're on an adventure, you're on an expedition to Greenland. So we're this beautiful mix. And as we go forward, I'll show you some pictures of the onboard experience, but of course also the adventure side of it in Greenland. So Greenland is huge, like really big. It's the world's largest island. It is, if you took it and moved it over top of Europe, it would cover most of Western Europe. However, there's not many people there. It's a bit sparsely populated. Most of the population will live on the West Coast. And what we're talking about today is really special because it's the East Coast. So we're going to talk about what is there to go see. And from this point on, I've taken all these pictures. So all these pictures are from my more recent trip to Greenland. Now, if we were in person, I would say, who's been to Greenland? And then some people would maybe put their hands up, or some people would look at me like I'm crazy because maybe the reason you're here is because you want to go and you want to know more about it and you haven't been yet. So in any case, I hear a lot that people think Greenland is difficult to get to, it's far away, it's inaccessible. I'm here to tell you those things are not true. It is much closer than you think. In fact, at its closest point, Canada is just 24 kilometers away from Greenland. And you can see that in the map on the left, the globe there at the tips, where the territory of Nunavut really almost connects with the mainland Greenland. On the left, or excuse me, on the west coast, you see a couple names of cities there. Again, those are the largest cities in Greenland. There are 32,500 people who live in Greenland, and they have maybe only 12 or 13 towns that have more than 1,000 people. So when you think of Greenland, you're not thinking of big, big cities, really. But on the west is where most people are there. So I mentioned it's 24 kilometers away from Canada. And there's a body of water that separates it called the Kennedy Channel. There are 3 islands in the Kennedy Channel. 2 of them are very close to Greenland, one's in the middle. In 1973, the government of Canada sat down with the government of Denmark, who administers Greenland, and said, let's draw a line down the middle of the Kennedy Channel. Everything west of that line, it'll be Canada's. We can explore it, we can discover it, use any resources that might be there. And same for the east of that line, it will belong to Denmark, to Greenland. And so the 2 islands close to Greenland, great. No arguments there. But the 3rd island, called Hans Island, is right in the middle. And so the border would have gone right through the middle of the island. And so Canada said, oh, you know what? It's fine. We'll take it off your hands. It can be ours. And Greenland or Denmark said, no, 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 it's ours. So on went this sort of friendly battle between Canada and Denmark, or Greenland for this island. Anyway, in 1984, a Canadian went there, put the flag down and said, no, this is ours, it belongs to Canada. But because neither country is specifically known for being hostile, we left a bottle of whiskey. Then, a couple months later, somebody from Greenland or Denmark came and put their flag, removed the Canadian flag, put their flag up and said, no, no, it's ours. But again, to avoid any really serious conflict, they left a bottle of schnapps. This was 1984. This went on for 38 years, this back and forth between the two countries saying, no, it's ours, no, it's ours. And then in 2022, they actually said, you know what, let's demonstrate to the world that border conflicts can be resolved peacefully. Let's put a border down the middle of the island and share it. So if you didn't know, that means that today, Canada has two land neighbors, of course, the USA, but also Denmark or Greenland. If you look it up, we've got a land border. It's about 1 kilometer long, and it's on this island. So all of this to say that the frozen island, Kalahit Greenland, is a lot closer than people might think. In fact, it's our land neighbor at this point. It is largely covered in ice. About 80% of it is covered in the ice cap. And it's a very, very special place. And I'll talk about this, I think, on the next slide, that 90% of the population there is indigenous. So it's still a really exciting place to visit because you've got that sort of lifestyle and that history and those linguistics and all of that still intact, which is quite exciting. Kalahit Nuuk'ed. Kalahit means it's the Inuit ethnic group, the name that they have for themselves, and Nuuk'ed means their land. So in a sense, it means the land of the Inuit people. And you can see, if you look and you consider that Nunavut is so close, they have shared linguistics. They've got similar languages. So Nuuk'ed, meaning their land, is of course Greenlandic. Nunavut in Canada means our land. So even in that sense, you can see how there's a bit of a connection between us, our two countries. Kalahit Nuuk'ed. And the people, they're known as having the warmest welcome in the Arctic. And it's not just a tagline. It's not just like a ploy to get people to show up. It's actually very true. And there's lots of reasons, because they're genuinely very nice people, but also they want to become independent. I mentioned that they're administered by Denmark. They want to be independent. Denmark wants them to be independent. The only thing that they require is proof that they will be financially independent, financially stable, so that when they do break off, they can self-sustain and they're not leaving them in a bad situation to become independent. So traditionally, the ways to stay independent financially would be hunting and fishing and handicrafts and so on. But the largest and fastest growing, which is probably why we're all here, you would know that it is tourism. So they are welcoming, they're happy to see you, and they're excited to share their experience and their stories for the people who go, and they're just really all smiles and just delightful to be there with. Now, Dave mentioned it is a summer destination. It is true. You can only go really in the summer if you're going by ship. So we would go from May to September. That whole time you can get to the west. The east coast, the ice tends to melt a little bit more slowly. So that's going to be maybe towards August, September that you can go to the east. But otherwise, depending on what you're looking for, you've got different times of year that you can go. And it is the same in a way, the same seasons as us, in a sense that when it's our summer, it's their summer. Now that means that you're looking between like 0 and 10 degrees. So, I mean, as Canadians, we're kind of used to the cold weather. So when I was there, 0 to 10 degree, it was fine. It was beautiful. I loved it. Some of the other nationalities on board didn't think it was as great. The Spaniards specifically, they were a bit cold the whole time. But in any case, that's the average temperatures we're looking at. And then, of course, you can see there what kind of wildlife or environmental conditions you can expect throughout the season. So why Greenland, and why Greenland with HX? So our ships, we'll look at them in more detail in a minute, but they are small ships. So they can go into shallower waters, into narrower fjords, kind of access these smaller communities that those larger ships can't really get to. And I mentioned earlier, of course, that our science program means that we've got the science labs on board. We've got all the ologists you can imagine on board helping you understand what you're seeing. They range the ships that go to Greenland anywhere from 200 passengers to 500. So depending on the size you're comfortable with, you've kind of got a selection that would suit you best. And a couple of different reasons there, but the one I would like to mention specifically is the all-inclusive experience. So you'll have your meals, your drinks, Wi-Fi, tips. They'll give you a jacket. Your excursions in those outboard Zodiac motorboats are included. And I think kind of the most exciting is the professional photographer who's on board. And they take your pictures, they take pictures of the destination, of the wildlife and everything. And then after you're sailing, they send you a digital photo album and it's all free. It's all included in the price that you pay for the cruise. So what can you do in Greenland? Lots of outdoor-based activities, of course, because it's all about the nature. Hiking, you've got your expedition boat cruising, community visits. There are ruins there from lots of ancient tribes that have come and gone throughout the years. There are whales, seabirds, musk oxen, polar bears. We saw all of those things. You can go kayaking. You can go weaving between icebergs that are at least 10 stories tall. Um, and yes, you can do a polar plunge, which means you go swimming. It's not mandatory, but you can do it and you get a little certificate. So here are some of the communities that you can visit with HX in Greenland. The one I went to is the longest one and maybe the most difficult to say, but I've mastered it, Ittoqqortoormiit. You can go to Ittoqqortoormiit on the east coast and the rest are on the west, most notably Nuuk, the capital city, Ilulissat, which is where most of the icebergs that end up in the North Atlantic come from. So lots of kind of really unique things to see and do there. I'll just go through some pictures because I wanted to kind of show off a little bit, but also tell some stories. Because when we first got to Greenland, I looked at the landscape and I thought, wow, it's barren, it's desolate, there's nothing there, there's no life. And then we got on shore and I started to see so much flora, so much fauna. Like I said, we saw polar bears, we saw muskox, we saw so many different wild, Arctic hares, Arctic foxes, so many different kinds of whales and seabirds. But all of the flowers and the colors, it was so vibrant. And we were there for 9 days, and every stop we had was very much different from the last. So, one, the moss was all orange and green, and the next it was all sandy and black and white sand kind of mixed together. And so it was always changing the scenery. In Ittoqqortoormiit, the community we visited, you've got some dogs there that are really, really cute. So I wanted to put that picture up. In the bottom right, that's a muskox skull. And if I saw that in normal life, I'd say, that's interesting. But because we had zoologists there with us, they explained that those spirals you see in the nose of a muskox there, it's because in the winter, when they breathe in really, really, really cold air, that allows it to warm up before it hits their lungs, so it doesn't hurt their little lungs. So little details that you get from traveling with the experts on board, the scientists and everybody. Really, really cool. Speaking of science and education, I went out on the science boat where you, as you can see on the left, she's got an instrument there. That instrument measures the salinity, the conductivity, so how salty is the water really, the depth, the temperature, the amount of phytoplankton and all these sorts of things. And then because not many people go to East Greenland, we actually took that data, brought it on board, analyzed it under the microscope, and then submitted it to global research projects where real scientists in the real world took our data and inputted it to help understand this area of the world. So it's very much hands-on. You can get as interested as you'd like, as involved as you like. There were some people who had no interest in science at all on board, and they were absolutely fascinated by it. So really, really special experience. I mentioned our fleet earlier. I mentioned that we have 5 ships, which we do, but only 4 of them go to Greenland. So the 2 twin sister ships are on the top, Roald Amundsen, Fridtjof Nansen. They can each hold up to 500 passengers. The Fram on the bottom left, that's the one I went to Greenland on, can hold 250, but for Greenland, it's capped at 200. Really beautiful ship. Again, we were talking about those finishing touches and the decor on board. Stunning ship, very, very comfortable, very intimate, very beautiful. And then the bottom right, the Spitsbergen, that's 220 in capacity. We did also mention suites. The suites come with special access to the specialty dining restaurant. They also come with the mini bar included. You get laundry every day if you want it, which is lovely. I think I would be happy to do it at the end of the voyage so that you get home and you unpack clean clothes. I think that'd be really lovely. And so you can see by the pictures that it is very much an elevated experience. I mentioned before when we were talking about that perfect balance that it's not ultra luxury. There's no butler service, there's no dress codes for dinner. It's a lot more laid back than that, but it's still very much an elevated premium kind of experience. Very, very comfortable on board. And there's a special deal with suites, but I'll talk about that at the end. So, some sample itineraries that can bring you to Greenland, and in some cases, some other countries as well. This one is really special. It's a one-off itinerary, and it is for the eclipse in 2026. We had a solar eclipse in part of Canada on April 8th this year, and it was a huge hit, if you want to call it that. A lot more people were interested in it than I thought would be. I was so excited. I had it in my calendar for years before that, but because of that, we kind of developed this itinerary to bring you to view that solar eclipse. So this one will start down in Oslo, and then it'll fly you up to Svalbard. So you're going to that archipelago in northern Norway, polar bear habitat, almost at 80 degrees north, like really, really far up north. And then you go over to Greenland, to East Greenland, and that's when the solar eclipse happens. When you're in East Greenland, maybe you're exploring that fjord system that we'll talk about soon, or the one that I went to, the national park. Maybe you're seeing some wildlife, and then suddenly it'll get dark. So it's really, really exciting experience ready for you there. And it ends in Reykjavik, Iceland. The next one, this is the one that I did. Starts and ends in Reykjavik, so relatively easy to get to from Canada. Direct flights from many places. This one brings you past the 66-degree north, so past the Arctic Circle. It explores the world's largest fjord system, which is called Scoresby Sound. This is the one that will take you to Itokatormi, that small community on the east coast, which, by the way, has about 300 people in it. You can't really get to it by ship, except during 2 months of the year. So it's really, really isolated. It's one of the most isolated communities in the whole world. But the people are really, really amazing there. I was just walking down one of their streets and I heard music coming from a house. So I looked over and I thought, oh, that sounds nice. Somebody opened the window and had like a 10-minute chat with me just because they were so curious, just as much as I was curious to talk to them. They were just so excited to see us. And this one also goes to the world's largest national park, that top circle there called Northeast Greenland National Park. The Grand Greenland Expedition itinerary, this one goes to West Greenland. So you can see the differences there. There's a lot more communities to stop in and see. Some of them are just like hunting outposts, but you'll be able to visit the capital. In fact, you'll fly from Reykjavik to Nuuk and then sail from there. We have the only partnership in the travel industry with Air Greenland. So we are chartering the Air Greenland planes to bring people to Greenland starting in 2025 and beyond. They are opening up a new section of the Nuuk airport, November 28th. So they have an airport already, but they're building a really, really big, long runway, wide runway, opening at November 28th, which means that more international aircraft can get to Greenland. I think Greenland's going to become the new Iceland. I think it's just going to take off. It's going to be very popular in a couple years. Mark my words. So get there before everybody else does, I'd say. But in any case, this itinerary, let's get back to that. Starts in Reykjavik, flies you to the capital city, to Nuuk. You'll go up north, quite far north, actually, in this case, past Ilulissat, that's where all those icebergs come from, to a couple different smaller communities, and of course, different scenery. As far further north you go, it'll change, because even just in that small chunk of East Greenland I went to, it was so different one day to the next. Really, really, really special place. And last sample itinerary, I believe, is this one, Discovering Greenland. This one is out of Reykjavik. You'll sail to South Greenland. So the last itinerary didn't go to South Greenland, but this one does. And in South Greenland, it's the only place, I mean, I say it kind of facetiously, but it's one of the only places, let's say, that is green in Greenland. It's where they have agriculture. It's where they have farms. It's not a huge area, but that's where they can have those sorts of things because it's a little bit warmer down in that spot. So you can see that kind of side of Greenland there. And then it finishes in Nuuk in the capital, and then you fly over to Reykjavik to finish your trip. So quite accessible, definitely not as difficult to get to as many people might think, because a lot of our itineraries start and end in Iceland. And then I'd say start looking at 26 if you're thinking of that far in advance. Take a look at 26, 27, because you'll probably see itineraries, of course, including ours, that might just start and end right in Nuuk, because there's discussions of having direct flights from Canada straight to Nuuk. So a lot of exciting things coming from Greenland, and they deserve it. I'm so happy for them. It's an incredible, incredible place. But before we wrap up, I did mention there's a special on suites. This is one of the suites. That fire looks so cozy, especially maybe you've just been hiking on land. Maybe you did the polar plunge. Maybe you've been outside doing some wildlife observation of the whales and stuff with the expedition team. So beautiful, cozy fireplace. Anyway, the suites right now are up to 500, or excuse me, $5,500 off. That's per person. And that goes until the end of this month. So I know that's a lot of information to take in. Every sort of presentation is in a way the same, because you get a lot of information. So if you do find yourself with questions afterwards, of course, that's what Dave's there for. He'll answer all your questions. He'll get you booked, and he'll be able to give you advice on when to book and where the best places are to go and all that. And of course, he knows that I'm just a phone call away if you might have questions that he doesn't know the answer to. So thank you for coming. This was HX, this was Greenland, and we'd like to change the way you see the world, especially in Greenland.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ian. I'll get you to end your screen now and we'll wrap up tonight. But thank you so much, of course, for coming to share about your trip. And, of course, for pointing out to people that there is a way that they can get up to Greenland. And I think that you're absolutely right. The ways to get up through Reykjavik right now are super easy. I know we have some viewers on tonight from Atlantic Canada. Last summer saw the renewal of the Halifax Reykjavik service on Icelandair. I know a lot of people were really eager for that to come back. Well, that nonstop flight can get you up to Reykjavik. And I love that your itineraries have some options now to fly to Nuuk. I didn't know it was because the airport had been upgraded, but I just knew that that can actually save 2 days of sailing
Mhm.
across the Denmark Straits. And so, sometimes when we do look at Greenland, I know a lot of times with customers look at it, they're longer itineraries, but again, the geography is vast, and when you really
Mhm.
start to map it out mile to mile, it takes a while to get around. Just love those itineraries. And I will say as well for the viewers, when I send out the video, I'm going to include two other HX itineraries I think you should know about because you're going higher. And I'm not talking like 420 high, I'm talking like top of the world high. You've got an itinerary going all the way up to Thule, if I'm getting that correctly
Yep.
now.
Yep.
And another one I think for Canadians that they might find interesting is there's some itineraries that visit Greenland and Baffin Island. So if you feel like, oh, I'm Canadian, I need to see Canadian Arctic and Greenlandic Arctic, now you can have it both ways. And then that one's kind of cool because it eventually comes down to St. John's for that one. So you can have a really easy flight. And you know what's even cooler is that the day before St. John's, it's going to be like right out my window, right here in Bonavista Bay, Newfoundland. So anyway, so that's just wonderful. A few other things, folks, before we sign off tonight. Just want to let you know that our next travel talk will be happening live on November the 4th, and it's going to be on Vietnam and Cambodia. And our guest speaker will be Wendy Mills coming in from Exodus. She's been over there a couple of times. She's taken lots of people over there. She's got lots of information about, I think, a really great destination for people looking for a exit from Canadian winter. And I've got a couple other talks in the works between now and the holidays. So those will be coming out. Just keep an eye on my social media, Destination Whatever on Facebook, Destination Whatever.travel on Instagram, and Destination Whatever on YouTube. And lastly, destinationwhatever.com/travel news. That's destinationwhatever.com travel news. That's where you can get my newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter, see past editions. If you want to see some photos from the people that get out to Sable Island with HX, That's back in the newsletter. You can just go back and check those out on the website. So a few different ways that you can keep your wanderlust going. And then when you're ready to talk a little bit more, like Ian said, I'm here. I can help because I know the Hurtigruten product well. I have direct access to the booking system. And then with Ian for any other questions, we've got all your needs met so we can get you up there. So thank you everybody for coming out. And I look forward to seeing you at the next time we have another travel night.
Thank you for watching. This has been a Destination Whatever travel production. Subscribe for all my content. Facebook at Destination Whatever, Instagram at destinationwhatever.travel, and YouTube at Destination Whatever. Or head on over to my website, destinationwhatever.com. I'm your #1 travel expert, helping travelers nationwide explore the world. So get in touch and let's make your travel fantasies come true.